Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast Lawyer Speaks. It is Thursday, and I'm Gordon Firemark, and I'm happy to be here with you to share with you about whatever's on your mind. We're going to do questions and answers and all kinds of good stuff. I'm looking for my overlays because something isn't showing the way it's supposed to show, and maybe there it is. Let's see. Yeah, that's the one I'm on. So say hello if you're watching live. Drop a note in the comments to let me know you're here. And if you're not watching live, drop a note in the comments with a hashtag replay or something, just so I know you watched. And I am here every Thursday afternoon, 4 p.m. Pacific time, to answer questions about podcast law and address, topics that are of interest and concern in the community these days, and give you some answers. So stand by for a second while I turn off the noisy fan overhead, and the printer that's behind me should be finishing up pretty quickly. And so today it's been an interesting day. I had to take my MacBook Pro into the Apple Store for repair because, hi Charles, brought into the store because the keyboard was malfunctioning. I usually sit at my desk with a separate keyboard and a separate monitor and all that. And when I went to use the MacBook Pro the other day, I noticed, I was using it as a laptop, I noticed that the keyboard was not, some of the keys weren't pressing down and things were stuck and that kind of stuff. So took it into the Mac store, and I'm going to be out without the computer until at least Monday. So I teach online classes, one tonight, in fact, and I went through yesterday without a computer and using an older Mac that we had laying around. And it was okay, but then when I thought, oh shoot, I have to do presentation and I have to do live streaming and slides and the whole routine, I got up this morning and I tried using that computer. It wasn't going to work. So I borrowed my wife's laptop. That wasn't so good either. So I ended up having to go out and buy a brand new Mac today. I got a Mac Mini. That is what I'm streaming through right now, and I'm pretty pleased with it, but it was not an expected expense. So I'm sure you all know how that goes. Anyway, so Charles is here watching, and I'm happy to see you, Charles. Tell me what's going on with you. And who else is here? Somebody else is watching. I can see that. Anyway, today I didn't have a lot of questions submitted, but a couple of things did come in. Someone on YouTube, in response to one of my videos about not reading other people's stuff into your microphone as part of your podcast episodes. Don't read from books. This person said, I want to create a podcast about reviewing self-help books. What should I watch out for? Well, I think the main thing to watch out for is don't read from the self-help books as your podcast. If you want to review them, that's great. Critique and commentary is fine, but as soon as you start using the actual content from the self-help book, you are starting to get into the area of copyright infringement. If you're reading passages, you're at risk of a claim of copyright infringement. Now, small passages used in the context of criticism and commentary probably falls down in the area of fair use, but it depends. If it's a passage that amounts to 10% of the book, because it's a very short book, excuse me, or a very long passage, you might be on the wrong side of the determination. It's not just how much you take, but it's also the substance of what you take. It's also the purpose for which you take the material. It's also the nature of the original work and the impact, if any, that it has on the market for the original or the marketplace for the original. So, part of the value of owning copyright rights is that the owner has the right to say no to a use they don't care for. And that may not actually be an impact on the market, but it can be an impact on the owner's the value for the owner, and so there is an impact there as well. So those are the four factors that we look at in a fair use analysis, and it's an ad hoc determination. So we have to look at all four of those factors in each individual instance, and sort of take a totality of the circumstances kind of an approach. So it's a little A little challenging, we can't say for sure. So if you're going to do a review show, do it as a review show and keep your use of the actual content of the books or whatever you're reviewing down to the minimum you need in order to make your point, without being just an alternate media form of that material. So, who else is here? Hang on, I'm not seeing my comment window. Stand by for a second. Oh, because it's way over here. All right. All right. So say hello in the comments if you don't mind. Let me know you're here. I see a few people watching. And my next topic, someone asked, why should I bother registering the copyrights for my podcast episodes? And it's a great question. We touched on this a little bit last week about how challenging it is to register copyrights because you have to register each individual episode as a standalone work, or you have to find a way to do group registration. Now, I did have some interesting comments on Facebook about that, and someone said, hello, Octavia. Someone on YouTube actually commented on it and clarified thoughts about the nature of what is publication, but didn't provide any, and Eric is here too, didn't provide any citation to what the points that they were making, so I don't know how valid it is, but they were sort of talking about, look, if you make your intention clear that this is not intended as a publication, that it's not available for sale or reproduction, that it's really just a stream, then you might be able to avoid the idea that it's a publication. The reason that's relevant is that there is a group registration available for certain unpublished works. So that would allow you to do 10 unpublished podcast episodes as a single registration. Now, there are pros and cons to that. I'm not going to get too far down the rabbit hole on that today, but there are some advantages and disadvantages to doing things that way when it comes down to infringement. But it certainly can save you a lot of money with a registration costing in the neighborhood of around $50-$60 per registration. You don't want to be doing that every week if you don't have to. So, why should you register at all? Why bother? Well, registration is necessary. It's not a requirement under the law for the protections of copyright law, but it is a requirement before you're able to file a lawsuit in the federal court to sue somebody for copyright infringement. Question number one is, have you registered your copyright? If you haven't, then you're going to get thrown out of court and you get back in line and register then and so on. So registering copyright is a good idea. Registering within 3 months of that first publication is really important, because when you do that, you then are entitled to receive your attorney's fees if you win the lawsuit. So if you haven't registered prior to the infringement, you're not going to be able to get your attorney's fees. And it makes it a lot harder to find a lawyer to take the case, a lot harder to justify hiring a lawyer. So attorney's fees can be awarded to a successful plaintiff who has properly registered copyright within 3 months of that first publication. And I'm not sure how that applies to unpublished work. If it's an unpublished work, then the publication, the date is irrelevant, but still, great idea to register for that reason. And if you have registered early, you can claim statutory damages. And that means that you go into the court and you say, look at these bad people and what they did with my copyright. Tell them to give me something. And then the court, the judge, the jury gets to decide how much to give you without you having to prove exactly how much you've lost. Now, you still can prove how much you've lost or the nature of your damages, which might include that, market harm thing without, because you didn't get the chance to say no, and it erodes your reputation or your work's reputation or something like that. So you get to still do those things, but the court doesn't have to rely only on the monetary loss that you were able to prove that you've suffered. And so statutory damage is really a valuable thing because it does provide plaintiffs an incentive to pursue their cases, and another way for lawyers to take contingency fee. I don't think you see too many contingency fees in copyright cases, but nevertheless. So registering your copyright, it's a relatively easy process. You go online to copyrightoffice.gov, and it's a difficult to navigate form just because look, whenever you have a website designed by government contractors, I think there's an issue. And look, it is challenging to make a website that's functional for all the different permutations that you might have with copyright. But anyway, the design and instructions on the website are not so easy to navigate. It's, you have to pay very close attention and follow instructions really, really explicitly. But it's doable. So, and then you pay your fee and you've got to register. You file a copy of the work, which goes to the Library of Congress, and there you go. Charles, Copyright Office Compendium, Chapter 1900 has a good explanation, but no current court cases cited. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, and I'll take a look at that. Thank you for the citation, Charles. Now, how do I make that go away? There we go. Click that. Okay. So, what else did I have to talk about? I saw an interesting post. I thought I would talk with you all about this post. It's not a particularly a legal subject, but it's just something I want to share because, as you may know, I've been doing a lot of work around the idea of how to make a business out of your podcast and to make money as a podcaster. And this person posted in one of the podcasting groups, how do you measure success in podcasting? Do you measure it by downloads and subscriptions or something else? And people were chiming in with all of their own thoughts and ideas, and I thought I'd put it to you folks. How do you measure the success of a podcast? I'll tell you my own in a second, but I'm very curious if anybody has their own thoughts about this. How do you measure your success as a podcaster? For me, I think that, and a lot of people were saying, look, if you have a number of episodes under your belt, that's success. You're getting your message out. Making an impact with people counts as success. So if people are listening and hearing what you have to say, and maybe it gets them thinking, it changes the way they view the world, it changes something about their lives, makes them smile for a few minutes and feel a little happier in the course of their day, hey, I call that success. And I dare say you do too. Now, is it the kind of success you want? Look, you may have set a goal to make some money or whatever, or maybe not to lose money on your podcast. And so we have to make some decisions about how we're going to view success. Other metrics that you might look at is how many reviews have you gotten or ratings on your iTunes page, your Apple Podcasts page, and other directory listings. Or maybe it is something to do with, the level of the kinds of guests that you have coming on the show. If you can get big names to come on your show, that counts as success. Now, probably that kind of success also probably trails it a little bit, but, it also trails the number of listeners and subscribers and downloads and those kinds of things. But revenue might not be the right measurement because, I'll tell you from my own example. My podcast isn't here to make money. I do entertainment law update. It isn't here directly to earn revenue, right? We have had sponsors and they pay us and it's nice and, it covers some of our costs and helps us out a little bit. But the real purpose behind entertainment law update isn't about earning money. It's about impact and it's about authority building. It's about positioning myself and my co-host Tamara and the other people who work on the show as well as experts in the field of entertainment law. We are, people who are paying close attention to what's going on in our world. That translates into referrals from other lawyers. Listeners to the show refer business to us when it makes sense for them to do that. And when a client is referred to me or to Tamara, and they go and Google us and look us up on the internet, because that's what people do nowadays, right? They find this big body of work. We've got 125 episodes in the can over the last 12 years. And so they can see that we've been doing this for a while. We know what we're talking about. And we're on top of things. And they get to listen to our voices and hear the smile in our voices and the way we kid around about things, but also when we take things seriously, they can hear, we know what we're talking about. So that's authority building. And that leads to our law practices making money and generating business. So that is a legitimate measurement of success. Do we have a number of episodes? Do we have listeners? Do we get referrals? All those things. That's how I measure my success. Now, other people measure their success by these other metrics that I've talked about. And all of those are fine. Now, if you want to generate revenue from advertising, you've got to go for big, big, big numbers. Well, what does that mean? It may mean crafting your messaging, that is the content of your show, in order to attract a big audience. Now, how do you do that? Well, let's ask Joe Rogan. What does Joe do? He's pretty controversial. He's pretty outspoken and plain spoken, right? He says what's on his mind and he doesn't mind ticking people off, right? So that's one way. Now, if that's who you are, then that's success too. But maybe that's not who you are. Maybe you're more interested in sharing, an important message in a I don't know, a more, I don't want to say polished, but a more diplomatic kind of a way, and you want to be a little more taciturn in the way you present your views, those kinds of things. Well, you may not be able to attract as big an audience because, after all, audiences are attracted to controversy, right? So these are choices we have to make, and we balance things out. Now, if you're covering something that is of giant, widespread interest, to everybody, maybe your show has to do with the Major League Baseball or a major sport or a particular art form or something like that, and you've got a lot of people who are really interested in that. Great. Be a little controversial about it and hear what they have to say and hear what you have to say. Get it out there, and you'll attract an audience. Advertisers are looking for the broadest possible reach. Now, that said, I'll tell you that the Entertainment Law Update, my podcast, does not have a giant audience. We're in the few thousand downloads numbers. But we're able to command a very nice advertising rate on a cost per thousand views or listens basis because of who our audience is. We're very narrowly targeted to an audience of people who do entertainment law, or who are lawyers generally, or who are studying to be entertainment lawyers, or who have a keen interest in the entertainment legal field because they work in the entertainment industry. Well, all of those things translate into fairly high earner, or soon to be fairly high earner level people. And so they are a very attractive market for certain kinds of advertisers. And our sponsors have mostly been businesses that specifically sell their products and services to lawyers. So, being able to reach a very narrow targeted segment of the audience is very good. So just ask Facebook and Google advertising and so on. Narrow marketing targeting can be very valuable. So we're getting, several multiplier over the standard CPM advertising rates. So that's what I think. Success is what you make it. Success is what you choose for it to be. And I say if you're having an impact, that's considered success in my view. So just choose a metric and work on it, because what gets measured improves. So if you want to increase your listenership by, 10% in the next 6 months, do it. Make that a goal and measure your listenership for each episode and work those steps. Get more people on, get more downloads, whatever it takes, and do the things that you need to do to make that happen. Anchor, the podcast media hosting service, has had a bit of a problem. You might have heard, I think I talked about it a week or two ago. They have had a problem with people signing up for Anchor because it's free, and importing RSS feeds and claiming ownership of those RSS feeds. And Anchor does allow you to monetize a little bit. So what's happening is people who don't own the podcast, people who are not the creator of the show, are getting onto Anchor, submitting a show's RSS feed, having Anchor slurp all those episodes in to Anchor, and then Anchor puts it out there, and it's on Apple, and it's on Spotify and the other platforms, and Anchor is monetizing that stuff by dropping ads and paying the wrong person. Well, James Cridland over at Pod News did a little bit of an investigation over the last few months, and he published earlier this week that exactly how this process works and exactly how little Anchor seems to care about the fact that it's infringing people's copyrights. And sure, they'll take it down if you notify them, but we shouldn't have to play whack-a-mole with a company that's doing this. If they're going to be slurping up RSS feeds, they should at the very least be verifying that the person who submitted it is the person who is creating and in charge of that RSS feed. So if your show is on Anchor, when you didn't intend for it to be. If you're finding copies of your show, sometimes it's the same exact artwork, it's the same, absolutely the same content, all that stuff. If you're finding multiple copies of your show on in the directories, this could be what's going on for you, and you'll need to verify and figure out how this is happening, where it's coming from. Now, Anchor says they don't have any special relationship with Apple, and Apple as well says that, but for some reason, Apple's approving podcasts that are coming in from Anchor in a more rapid manner than other podcasts get admitted to the iTunes or Apple podcast directory. So sort of hard to say what's going on there. But you got to send the DMCA takedown notice if you've got a podcast that's been slurped, as I describe it as slurping, that's been slurped in this way. Then you'll need to do the DMCA takedown to get it taken down, and that's there's no telling whether it's going to happen again. If somebody thinks your podcast has a good audience and can get some good reach, maybe they'll try it again. So just got to be vigilant and keep an eye on this until Anchor is shown a reason to police this stuff themselves. So the DMCA provides the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the DMCA. This is the takedown procedure. What the DMCA is an amendment to the copyright law from around 2001 is when it went into effect. That basically says, look, this internet thing is starting to grow, and we've got to protect the companies that are doing this stuff so that they can create these robust products and services. So we're going to create a safe harbor for them. That means that if they have user-generated content that actually doesn't belong to the user who submitted it, we aren't going to let people sue the platform, the YouTubes, the Spotifys, the Libs, whoever. We're not going to let them get sued because of that, as long as they have a mechanism for taking down the offending material. So that's why we have this system where you file a notice and they take it down, and then you go through a bunch of procedure if the other side, if the infringer wants to put it back up, that kind of stuff. So right now, Anchor is nestled comfortably in that safe harbor and doesn't have any real incentive to change the way they do things. But I think someone's going to have to come along and say, hey, wait a minute, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You have what some plaintiffs have called red flag knowledge of the infringement. And that was what led YouTube to create and install the Content ID system, so that YouTube doesn't wait for you to notify them of infringement. What they do is they've got a system that's looking and checking against fingerprints of other material. I think Anchor may be in a position where someday they'll have to do that if they're held to have this red flag knowledge. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. If you have an opinion on this and you want to share, please share it here. If you want to, share it with Anchor. Let them know they really should be doing a better job of protecting the rights of creators. Otherwise, they become a piracy site if they're not careful. So watch out for the feed imports on Anchor. What else? Somebody posted on, I want to say this is a podcast movement community, asking about, has anybody copyrighted the name of their podcast? And the answer is no. Nobody has copyrighted the name of their podcast. It's not possible to copyright the name of your podcast. It is possible to secure a trademark for the title of your podcast. If you have a series of episodes all under the same title, you can register that as a trademark here in the United States and many other places. Trademarks are words or symbols or phrases that are used to identify the source or origin of goods or services in the marketplace so that consumers don't get confused. When you go buy a package of cream-filled chocolate wafer cookies, and you go into the supermarket and you buy that bag of Oreos, you know you're getting Nabisco's version of a cream-filled chocolate wafer cookie, right? When you see that red triangle on the package, that tells you that's a Nabisco product. You see the name Oreo, that tells you what you're getting. That's a trademark. And so when you come and find a show title that you know you like, and you listen to it every week religiously, you are essentially buying into the brand. You're connecting with or becoming loyal to the brand of that show. Just like the podcast lawyer on the screen right now is a brand for me. right? It's my brand of legal services tied to the podcasting community. My color is all messed up here. Anyway, so you can register a trademark if your brand is distinctive. That means it sets you apart from others in the space and not purely descriptive. If it's a purely descriptive mark, it is not registrable and you're out of luck, right? So if your podcast is about sports and you call it the Sports Podcast, sorry, not going to happen. But if you call it the Green-Eyed Monsters, and it has nothing to do with green-eyed anything, that might work as a trademark. So choose your trademark, choose your titles with this in mind. Being distinctive, setting you apart, and being somehow different, and not purely descriptive of the services that are attached to that brand. And you can then register a trademark. Now, what's the process for registering a trademark? Well, first you should do a search, make sure you're not infringing anybody else's brands, and trademarks fall into various classes of goods and services. So just because somebody else is using a similar name in another completely different market segment, that won't necessarily stop you. But if they're using it in the same market segment, which podcasting falls in the entertainment and media and education class, as well as the downloadable audio recordings kind of class. So you got to check in those two classes in particular. So you do a search. Assuming the search comes back clean, you then prepare an application. It's done online. It's not the hardest application to do, but it's a little more technical and tricky than the copyright form, although it's an easier form to fill out from a design and functionality standpoint. You submit specimens of your use of the mark, specifying the dates on which the first use of the mark was made in commerce, and you pay your fee. The fee is about $250. It ranges from $225 to $350 per class of goods, and you wait. The trademark office will examine the application. It is not a sure thing. Copyright is more of a sure thing, not always, but mostly. But trademark is not a sure thing. They often come back with comments or questions or refusals to register because of one thing or another. And then you have an opportunity to make a legal argument why you should be allowed to register this trademark. So the process overall takes 3 to 5 months, and then you get a response, and then you have 6 months for something. It takes about a year typically to take a trademark from application to registration. And once you have it registered, then you have the duty of policing your trademark and making sure that it's being used properly and only by people who have the authority to do so from you. That is the trademark registration and policing process. We do these kinds of things in our law office all the time. And inside the Easy Legal for Podcasters product and program, we also teach you how to do it yourself. So I'm not going to do a big plug on that, but if you're interested in learning more about Easy Legal for Podcasters, let me just put it up on the screen really quickly. My keyboard is not... There we go. Let's see. Easy Legal for Podcasters. There it is. Easy Legal for Podcasters is an online course specifically for podcasters where I talk everybody through and teach through the process of getting yourself set up, getting legit, and ready for business as a podcaster so you can make money and not just make friends and audience from your podcast. So Easy Legal for Podcasters. We are not currently open right now, but we have a waiting list, and I'd love it if you join because we are going to be reopening at the end of the month, and I'd love to have you become a part of it as soon as we do reopen. So join the early bird list over at easylegalforpodcasters.com. And while you're at it, join the membership group, the Facebook group here, called Legit Podcast Pro. Guess I'll put that one up too, as soon as I figure out how to do that. Here we go. Oops. Legit Podcast Pro is the name of the Facebook group. What happened? My screen is acting all weird. Okay, Legit Podcast Pro. Facebook group. And here we go. Pow. So join the Legit Podcast Pro Facebook group and head on over to easylegalforpodcasters.com and join that wait list as well. All right. So that's it for today. Do I have one more topic here? No, I think we're good. We're at the half hour mark. If anybody has comments, I'll stick around for another minute or two. If you have any questions or comments, otherwise, I will say thanks again for watching. It's Thursday afternoons, 4 p.m. The Podcast Lawyer Live. The Podcast Lawyer Speaks Live. And there being no further business before me, I will say thanks for watching. I'll see you again next Thursday. Happy Thursday.